Commander Elias Ward stood on the edge of the shining alien city, his eyes scanning the beautiful towers that touched the sky. The sunlight reflected off the silver buildings and soft lights glowed under the glass roads. It was unlike anything he had seen before. The Varelians, the alien race who lived here, were known to be peaceful but distant. Today, Ward was here as part of Earth's first contact team, hoping to build trust and friendship. His team moved carefully behind him, all dressed in dark blue uniforms with Earth's flag stitched on the shoulders. They had been trained for this moment for months. Beside Ward walked Ambassador Keller, a tall woman with calm eyes, who had been practicing the Varelian language for weeks. Around them, Varelian soldiers in shining white armor stood guard. They carried strange-looking rifles, but their faces looked calm, though no one smiled. "This is a great day," Ambassador Keller whispered, glancing at Ward. "If this goes well, humans and Varelians could become allies." Ward nodded but kept his eyes sharp. "Let's hope nothing goes wrong," he said quietly. As they walked into the great hall, Ward looked up at the high ceiling filled with moving lights that looked like stars. Varelian leaders sat at a long table, waiting for the humans to approach. Everything seemed peaceful. The Varelian chancellor, a woman with silver eyes and smooth dark skin, stood to welcome them. "Humans," she said in a soft, musical voice, "we are pleased to have you here." Ambassador Keller stepped forward, smiling. "We come in peace. We hope today will be the first step toward a great friendship." For a moment, it felt like everything would be fine. Ward felt his muscles relax just a little. But then, a loud, sharp sound filled the air, like thunder crashing from inside the hall. Boom! The ground shook. Glass from the windows exploded inward. The lights in the ceiling went dark, and thick black smoke filled the room. "Get down," Ward shouted, pulling Keller to the ground as another explosion shook the hall. The Varelian guards shouted in their own language, raising their weapons and running in every direction. Ward looked around, trying to see through the smoke. He couldn't find the rest of his team. He grabbed his communicator. "This is Commander Ward. We're under attack." "Repeat, under attack." No answer, only static. A second explosion hit close to them, and the floor cracked under Ward's feet. He jumped to avoid falling through as part of the floor gave way, and Keller was pulled back by Varelian soldiers, disappearing in the smoke. "Ambassador," Ward called, but there was no response. Alone, Ward staggered through the ruined hall, his heart pounding. What had gone wrong? Who was attacking? Was it humans or Varelians, or someone else? Outside the broken walls, Ward saw fires burning in the streets. People were running, and the sound of sirens filled the air. The beautiful city now looked like a battlefield. As he stepped into a side alley to avoid falling debris, Ward heard a soft cry. He turned quickly, raising his sidearm in case it was an enemy. But what he saw made him freeze. A Varelian woman sat on the ground, her white clothes torn and covered in dust. Her long silver hair fell over her face. She held her arm as if hurt, and tears streamed down her cheeks. When she saw Ward, her silver eyes widened in fear. She tried to crawl backward, but her leg was injured. Ward lowered his weapon and raised his hand slowly. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said gently, though he knew she might not understand. She stared at him, trembling. Her lips moved like she wanted to say something, but no words came. "It's okay," Ward said softly, taking a careful step closer. "You're hurt. Let me help you." Suddenly, another explosion shook the ground, and the woman cried out in fear. She covered her head with her hands, shaking violently. Without thinking, Ward rushed forward and knelt beside her. "It's okay," he whispered again. "You're safe now." The woman looked up at him, her eyes full of tears. And before Ward could say anything else, she threw her arms around him, holding on tightly, crying against his shoulder. Ward was shocked. He had never expected an alien to hold on to him like this, like a scared human child. "It's okay," he repeated, gently putting his arms around her. I've got you." As she sobbed quietly, Ward looked up at the burning sky, his mind racing. What had happened here? Who had attacked them? And why did this alien woman cling to him like he was her only hope? He knew one thing for sure: the truth was much bigger than anyone had told him, and he was going to find out what it was. Commander Elias Ward held the crying Virelian woman gently, unsure what to do next. She was still shaking, her arms locked around him like he was the only safe thing in the world. Ward looked around the ruined street. Smoke rose from broken towers. Fires burned everywhere, and he could still hear the sounds of distant explosions. Who had attacked this city? And why? After a few minutes, the woman's crying grew softer. She pulled back slightly, looking up at Ward with wide silver eyes. "You're safe now," Ward said softly, trying to make his voice calm. "I won't hurt you." The woman blinked, wiping her tears with her sleeve. She said something in her language, her voice soft and broken. Ward touched the translator device in his ear, hoping it would catch her words. But her voice was too weak, and the translator only gave a few strange sounds. "I don't understand," Ward admitted, "but I want to help you." The woman stared at him, as if surprised to hear kindness from a human. Suddenly, a loud crash made both of them jump. A Virelian aircraft, on fire, flew low over the city, smoke trailing behind it before it smashed into a nearby tower. The ground shook with the force of the explosion. Ward stood up quickly, helping the woman to her feet. "We can't stay here," he said firmly. "We need to move." She winced as she tried to stand on her injured leg. Ward could see a deep cut on her ankle, and her clothes were torn. "All right," Ward said gently. "Here, lean on me." Carefully, she put her arm around Ward's shoulders, and he wrapped an arm around her waist to support her. Together, they moved away from the burning street, staying close to the walls to avoid being seen. As they walked, Ward kept an eye on the sky. Strange black drones were flying above, scanning the city. They weren't human drones. Ward had never seen machines like these before. After a while, they reached an old building that looked mostly empty. Ward helped the woman sit down on a bench inside. She winced in pain as she touched her ankle. Ward knelt in front of her and opened his small medical kit. "Let me see," he said softly. The woman hesitated but finally nodded. Ward carefully cleaned the cut and wrapped it with a bandage. "There. Not perfect, but it will help," he said. She looked at him, her eyes filled with confusion and something else. "Hope. My name is Ward," he said slowly, pointing to himself. "Ward." The woman looked at him for a moment, and then placed her hand on her chest. "Ceres," she said quietly. Ward smiled. "Ceres. Okay. Ceres, you're going to be all right." Ceres gave him a small nod, but her eyes were still full of fear. Just then, the translator in Ward's ear finally caught some of her quiet words. "Fire. In sky," it whispered in his ear. "Betrayal. Not humans." Ward's eyes narrowed. "Betrayal. What do you mean?" he asked, leaning closer. "Who did this?" Ceres looked away, her lips trembling. "Not you," she said softly, in broken English. Ward's heart raced. If humans weren't behind the attack, who was? Before Ward could ask more, a sharp sound echoed through the empty building, the sound of metal footsteps. Ward tensed and pulled Ceres behind a broken wall, peeking out carefully. 3 tall figures in black armor walked by, holding weapons that glowed with red lights. Their faces were covered by helmets. "Those are not Virelian soldiers," Ward whispered, "and they're definitely not humans." Ceres gripped Ward's arm tightly, fear in her eyes. Ward realized these soldiers might be the ones who attacked the city. After the soldiers passed, Ward turned to Ceres. "We have to get out of here," he said firmly. "But I need to know the truth. What happened? Why are they attacking your people?" Ceres looked down at her hands, her fingers twisting in fear. Finally, she took a deep breath. "Lie," she whispered. "They told us humans. Bad. They told us you. would attack us. But now, she looked into Ward's eyes. You help me. Ward felt a heavy weight in his chest. Someone had been spreading lies to the Varelians, making them think humans were their enemy. But who? And why? We need to tell everyone the truth, Ward said. Sarah shook her head. Too late. They control everything. Ward thought for a moment. Then we'll find proof. And we'll show them. Cirrus looked uncertain, but something in Ward's voice gave her courage. She nodded slowly. Suddenly, a loud sound outside made them both jump. The black-armored soldiers were back, and the I were searching the building now. Ward looked at Cirrus. Can you move? She nodded, even though she was still in pain. Ward stood up and helped her to her feet. Stay close to me, he said. I'll get us out of this. As they slipped quietly through the shadows, Ward knew two things for sure. First, someone powerful wanted to start a war between humans and Varelians. Second, he and Cirrus were now in this together. And no matter what, he would protect her and find out the truth. Ward and Cirrus moved quickly through the broken city, staying close to walls and hiding in the shadows. Every few minutes, black-armored soldiers marched past them, their glowing red weapons ready to fire. Ward held Cirrus close, helping her walk as she limped on her injured leg. But she was strong. Even though she was afraid, she didn't give up. We need to find shelter, Ward whispered. Somewhere safe. Cirrus pointed ahead, her voice weak. Old labs, that way. Ward nodded. Let's go. They moved carefully until they reached a tall building. Its walls were cracked, and smoke came out of broken windows, but it looked empty. Ward helped Cirrus inside. The inside of the lab was dark and dusty. Strange machines, half destroyed, stood in rows. Broken glass and tools covered the floor. Ward found a corner where they could hide for a moment. He helped Cirrus sit down and checked her bandage. You're doing great, he said softly. Cirrus gave him a tired smile. Thank you. Ward sat beside her, thinking. He looked at her, curious. You said something before, about a lie. About someone telling your people that humans are bad. Who told you that? Cirrus looked down, her fingers playing with a piece of her torn sleeve. Our leaders, she said quietly. They said humans would attack us. They said, you wanted our planet. Ward frowned. That's not true. Cirrus nodded. I know. Now I know. Ward leaned closer. But who attacked the city? Not humans. Cirrus's eyes filled with sadness. The ones in black armor, they are not from here. They came from the sky. They told our leaders lies. And when some of us didn't believe, they attacked. Ward's heart sank. Someone had tricked the Varelians into believing that humans were their enemies, and now those same enemies were destroying the city. We need to stop them, Ward said firmly. Cirrus looked at him with wide eyes. How? They are strong. They control the leaders. If we speak, we die. Ward thought for a moment. Then he asked, is there proof? Something we can show everyone. Something that shows who they really are. Cirrus's face lit up with hope. Yes, there are recordings in the main lab. But it is dangerous. Ward smiled. Dangerous is my job. Cirrus gave a small laugh, the first time Ward had seen her smile. Just then, they heard footsteps outside. Ward quickly stood and looked through a crack in the wall. Two soldiers in black armor were searching the street, their red eyes glowing under their helmets. We have to move now, Ward whispered. Cirrus nodded, standing with his help. Follow me. They left the broken lab and moved deeper into the city. Cirrus led Ward through small alleys, away from the soldiers. Finally, they reached a building that looked newer, though it had been damaged too. This is the main lab, Cirrus whispered. The recordings are inside. Ward checked his weapon. Let's get them. Inside, the lab was dark but powered. Machines hummed quietly. Cirrus limped to a control panel and started working on it, her fingers moving quickly over the glowing screen. Ward stood guard, watching the doors. "Hurry," he said quietly. "I'm trying," Cirrus whispered. Suddenly, a voice behind them said, "Stop right there." Ward spun around, aiming his weapon. But he froze when he saw a Virelian soldier holding a gun pointed at them. The soldier's eyes widened when he saw Cirrus. "Sister," Cirrus gasped. "Darren." Ward lowered his weapon slightly, watching them. "Cirrus, what are you doing with a human?" Darren asked, angry and confused. "He saved me," Cirrus said firmly. "And the city is under attack, not by humans. You know this." Darren looked unsure. "But the leaders said." "They lied," Cirrus shouted. "Darren, look around you. Our people are dying, and the ones in black armor are doing this." Ward stepped forward. "We have proof," he said calmly. "Let us show you." Darren looked between them, his hands shaking. Finally, he lowered his gun. "Show me." Cirrus finished working on the panel, and a hologram appeared, showing the black-armored soldiers meeting secretly with some Virelian leaders. "Humans will never know," one of the black-armored figures said. "We will strike first. Then you will rule what is left." Darren stared in shock. "It's true," he whispered. Cirrus touched his arm. "Help us, brother. Help us stop this." Darren took a deep breath, then nodded. "I'm with you." Ward felt hope rise in his chest. But suddenly, an alarm blared in the lab. Red lights flashed. "They know we're here," Darren said quickly. Ward grabbed Cirrus's hand. "We need to leave. Now." As they ran from the lab, Ward knew everything had changed. Now, they had an ally, and they had proof. But the enemy would stop at nothing to keep their secret, and Ward was ready to fight. Red lights flashed all around them. The alarm was loud, warning everyone in the city. Commander Ward knew they didn't have much time before the black-armored soldiers found them. "Go, go, go," Ward shouted, pulling Cirrus by the hand as they ran down a dark hallway. Darren ran beside them, holding his weapon ready. "They'll block all exits soon. We need to take a side way." "Lead the way," Ward said, keeping his eyes on Cirrus to make sure she could keep up. Even though she was limping, Cirrus moved fast. Fear gave her strength. She knew if they were caught, the soldiers would take the proof and maybe kill them. Darren turned sharply and opened a hidden door in the wall. "This way." They ran into a narrow tunnel. The lights inside were broken, so it was dark. Ward switched on a small light from his suit, guiding Cirrus carefully. "Where does this go?" Ward asked. "To the lower city," Darren answered. "Old transport tunnels. If we're lucky, they haven't found them yet." Behind them, Ward could hear soldiers yelling and running. The enemy was close. Finally, they reached the end of the tunnel. Darren pressed a button, and a metal door slid open with a loud creak. Ward stepped out first, holding his weapon high. The air was filled with smoke, but no soldiers were in sight. "All clear," Ward said, helping Cirrus out. They walked deeper into the lower city, where the tall buildings gave way to old streets and broken homes. The war had touched this place too. Cirrus stopped to rest, leaning against a wall. She was breathing hard, and Ward could see she was exhausted. "We'll stop here for a minute," Ward said softly. "You need to catch your breath." Darren stood nearby, watching carefully. "They'll come here soon. We don't have long." Ward looked at him. "You saw the proof. Now you know we're telling the truth." Darren nodded slowly. I didn't believe it at first. But now I see. Those soldiers in black armor, whatever they are, they're not here to help us. They're here to destroy us. And you." He looked at Ward. "You're not the enemy." Ward smiled slightly. "No, I'm not. But we need to stop them before they destroy both our worlds." Cirrus looked up, her silver eyes serious. "We must show the proof to everyone. If they see, maybe they will fight back." Ward nodded. agreed. But how do we reach the people? Your leaders are working with the enemy. Darren thought for a moment. There's a broadcast tower in the city center. If we can get there, we can send the message to everyone. They'll know the truth. Ward's mind was already working on a plan. Then that's where we need to go. But it won't be easy. The enemy will guard that place. Darren gave a small smile. Nothing has been easy since this started. Suddenly, they heard voices nearby, enemy soldiers searching the area. Ward quickly helped Cirrus to her feet. Time to move. They slipped through narrow alleys, moving carefully to avoid being seen. Every shadow could hide danger. As they walked, Ward looked at Cirrus. "You're brave," he said quietly. "Most people will have given up." Cirrus smiled weakly. "I have to be brave. My people are in danger. I want to save them." Ward nodded. "We'll do it together." After a long walk, they finally saw the tall tower in the distance. It rose high into the sky, with large satellite dishes turning slowly on top. "There it is," Darren said. "But look." Ward followed his gaze. The tower was heavily guarded. Black armored soldiers stood all around it, and drones flew in the sky, watching everything. "We can't fight all of them," Ward said, thinking fast. "We don't need to fight all of them," Darren said with a small smile. "I know a secret way in, an old maintenance tunnel that leads right under the tower." Ward smiled back. "Perfect. Show us." As they moved toward the secret entrance, Cirrus touched Ward's arm. "If we do this, they will come after us. You know that, right?" Ward looked at her and gave a soft smile. "Let them come. We'll be ready." Finally, Darren led them to a small door hidden behind old machines. He opened it, and they slipped inside. Inside the tunnel, it was dark and narrow. The air was cold and smelled like metal, but it was safe for now. As they walked, Ward looked at Cirrus and Darren. "Once we send the message, everything will change. Your people will know the truth, but it will be dangerous." Cirrus looked determined. "We can't stop now." Ward nodded. "You're right. We've come too far." Ahead, a soft light showed the end of the tunnel. Ward's heart beat faster. They were close to their goal. But something in his mind told him the hardest part was still to come. As they moved toward the tower, ready to share the truth, Ward knew one thing. This fight was not just for the Varelians. It was for humanity too. Because if the enemy won here, Earth would be next. And Ward was ready to make sure that never happened. Ward, Cirrus, and Darren moved quietly through the dark tunnel, stepping carefully to avoid making noise. Above them, the enemy soldiers guarded the tower, unaware that their enemies were coming from below. The narrow tunnel led to a metal door. Darren stopped and pointed at it. "This is the way in," he whispered. "The tunnel connects to a service room inside the tower." Ward nodded, holding his weapon close. He turned to Cirrus, who looked tired but determined. "Are you ready?" Ward asked. Cirrus gave a small smile. "Ready." Darren reached out and pressed a button. The door opened slowly with a soft hiss. Ward peeked inside. The room beyond was empty, filled with strange machines and blinking lights. "Clear," he whispered. They slipped inside, closing the door behind them. Ward looked around. The room was full of wires and computers. In the middle was a control panel. "This is it," Darren said. "From here, we can connect to the tower's broadcast system." Cirrus limped to the panel and began working, her fingers moving quickly over the screen. Ward stood near the door, listening carefully. He knew it wouldn't be long before someone came. As Cirrus worked, Ward whispered, "Once we send the message, what happens next?" Darren looked serious. "The people will know the truth. Some soldiers might join us, but others will still obey the leaders. There could be a fight." Ward nodded. "Then we need to be ready for that." Suddenly, Cirrus gasped. "What is it?" Ward asked quickly. "They've locked the system," she said. I need more time to break in. Ward's grip on his weapon tightened. Do it fast. Footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. Ward held up a hand. Someone's coming, he whispered. Darren moved to the door, aiming his gun. Cirrus worked faster, her hands shaking slightly but not stopping. The door opened, and a Virelian soldier stepped inside. Stop, the soldier shouted, raising his weapon. Ward moved fast. He grabbed the soldier's arm and pulled him inside, slamming the door shut behind them. The soldier struggled, but Darren aimed his gun. Quiet, Darren hissed. The soldier froze when he saw Cirrus. Lady Cirrus, what are you doing? I'm trying to save our people, Cirrus said firmly. We have proof that the black-armored soldiers are lying to us. The soldier looked confused. But they told us humans were the enemy. Ward stepped forward. They lied. They're using you. They want to destroy both our worlds. Cirrus looked at the soldier with pleading eyes. Please, help us. The soldier hesitated. Then he slowly lowered his weapon. I don't know what's happening, he said, but if you're fighting for Virelia, I'll help. Cirrus smiled. Thank you. Ward nodded. Good. Now, guard the door. Keep anyone from coming in. The soldier moved to the door and stood watch. Suddenly, Cirrus's screen flashed green. I'm in, she said, her eyes wide. You can send the message now, Darren asked. Yes, Cirrus said. I'm uploading the video. Everyone will see it. Across the whole city. Ward's heart pounded. Do it. Cirrus pressed a button. The screen showed the video. The secret meeting of the black-armored soldiers and the Virelian leaders, talking about the plan to attack humans and take control. The video streamed to every screen, every device in the city. Ward looked at Cirrus. It's done. She nodded. It's done. Suddenly, an explosion rocked the tower. The floor shook and dust fell from the ceiling. They're attacking, Darren shouted. Ward turned to the door. Get ready. More explosions shook the tower. From the small window, Ward saw Virelian citizens gathering in the streets, watching the video. Some soldiers were lowering their weapons, looking confused and angry. Others stayed loyal to the black-armored soldiers, firing into the air to scare people. The city is waking up, Ward said, hope rising in his chest. But then the door burst open, and enemy soldiers in black armor stormed in. Get down, Ward shouted, firing his weapon. Darren and the Virelian soldier fought beside him. Cirrus ducked behind a control panel, covering her head. Blasts of energy filled the room. Ward aimed carefully, taking down 2 enemy soldiers. But more kept coming. We need to get out of here, Darren yelled. Ward fired again. Cirrus, can you shut the door? I'll try, she said, crawling to another panel. More soldiers poured in, but then something amazing happened. Virelian soldiers who had seen the truth arrived to help. They fired at the black-armored soldiers, shouting, For Virelia. Ward felt a burst of hope. Cirrus shouted, The door is closing. The heavy metal door slid shut, cutting off the last of the enemies trying to get in. Ward, Darren, and Cirrus stood together, breathing hard. We did it, Cirrus whispered, her eyes full of tears. Ward smiled. We're not done yet, but today we showed them the truth. Outside, Ward could hear the city rising. People shouting for freedom, soldiers joining the fight against the real enemy. Ward looked at Cirrus. We'll win this. She nodded. Together. And as the city of Virelia woke up to the truth, Ward knew that this was only the beginning of the real fight. But now, they had a chance to win. The sound of fighting filled the air. Explosions shook the ground. The city of Virelia, once quiet and afraid, was now wide awake and full of fire. People had seen the truth. The message Cirrus sent was everywhere. And now they knew they had been lied to. From the window of the tower, Ward watched as crowds gathered in the streets. Some people held tools, Others carried weapons they had hidden for years. Even unarmed, they shouted, "Freedom for Varelia." Cirrus stood beside Ward, her silver eyes filled with hope and fear. "They're rising," she said softly. Darren, standing near the door with his gun ready, gave a small smile. "You've done it, Cirrus. They believe you." Ward nodded but stayed serious. "Now we have to help them win." Outside, black-armored soldiers pushed against the growing crowd. They fired warning shots in the air. But for every person that ran, 2 more stood strong. "They'll fight back harder now that they know we've exposed them," Ward said. Cirrus looked at him. "Then we need to lead the fight." Suddenly, their radio crackled. Ward picked it up. "This is Captain Elrond. We've seen the message. Many of us will join you, but others are still loyal to the leaders. Where can we meet to help?" Ward answered quickly, "We're in the tower. Gather anyone who's with us and get here fast. We'll plan the next move together." "Understood," Elrond replied. Ward turned to Cirrus and Darren. "Help is coming. We need to hold this place until they get here." Cirrus nodded. "Let's make a stand." Ward raised his hand. "Listen to me. I know they look strong. I know they have big weapons. But we have something stronger. The truth. We fight for our homes, our families, and for a future without lies." The people began to cheer louder. Captain Elrond stepped forward. "We fight for Varelia," he shouted. "And for Earth," Ward added. Suddenly, the enemy army stopped. Their leader, a tall figure in black armor, stepped ahead. His voice echoed through a speaker. "Give up now," he said coldly. "This city belongs to us. You cannot win." Ward stepped forward. "You're wrong," he said loudly so everyone could hear. "The people are awake now. We know the truth. You can't control us anymore." The black-armored leader laughed. "Then you will die together." He raised his hand, and the army began to move forward. "Hold the line," Ward shouted. The people stood ready. Some held energy rifles, others had metal rods and tools, but none of them ran away. As the enemy soldiers came closer, Ward took a deep breath and fired the first shot. It hit one of the black soldiers, knocking him to the ground. "Fight," Ward shouted. The air filled with the sounds of battle. Blasters fired, people shouted, and explosions shook the streets. Ward fought on the front line, protecting those behind him. Darren fought beside him, quick and brave, taking down enemy soldiers one by one. On the tower, Cirrus kept sending messages to the city, calling more people to join the fight. "We need help," she said over the speakers. "Varelia, rise up. This is our chance." In the distance, more people began to join. Citizens who had been hiding now picked up weapons and ran toward the fight. "We're not alone anymore," Captain Elrond shouted with hope. Ward smiled but kept fighting. Then, something unexpected happened. Ships appeared in the sky, human ships. They had heard Ward's call and had come to help. One of the human commanders spoke through a loudspeaker. "To the people of Varelia, we are here to fight by your side." Cheers filled the streets. The black-armored soldiers turned to fire at the sky, but the human ships rained blasts of energy on them, breaking their lines. Ward looked at Cirrus on the tower. She smiled at him, her eyes shining with tears. "We have a chance," she called down. "Keep sending the message," Ward shouted back. The battle raged on, but now Ward's army was stronger. Humans and Varelians fought together, side by side. Ward saw the black-armored leader in the distance, still giving orders. "If we stop him, the others might give up," Ward said to Darren. "Then let's do it," Darren replied. Ward and Darren pushed through the fight, making their way to the leader. Enemy soldiers tried to stop them, but with help from others, they fought their way through. Finally, they stood face to face with the leader. "You should have stayed on Earth," the leader sneered. Ward raised his weapon. "You should have left both our worlds in peace." The leader lunged at Ward, and they struggled, fighting hand to hand. The leader was strong, but Ward fought with everything he had. Darren fired at the leader, hitting his armor and weakening him. Ward saw his chance and struck a final blow, knocking the leader to the ground. "It's over," Ward said. The leader groaned but said nothing. As the leader fell, many of the black-armored soldiers dropped their weapons. Without their commander, they no longer wanted to fight. Cheers erupted around them as the enemy soldiers surrendered. Saris came running from the tower, smiling and crying at the same time. "You did it," she said, hugging Ward tightly. "No," Ward said, smiling. "We did it." Captain Elrond walked up, his uniform dirty and torn but his eyes bright. "Varelia is free," he said proudly. Ward looked around at the people, humans and Varelians, standing together. "We fought together," Ward said. "Maybe now we can build a future together." Saris nodded. "A future without lies. A future of peace." Darren grinned. "Sounds like a good future." Ward smiled at them all. For the first time in a long time, he felt hope. As the sun broke through the smoke-filled sky, shining down on the freed city, Ward knew this was only the beginning of a new story, one where humans and Varelians would write the future together, and he was ready to be part of that future.